Hello and welcome back to what was described this week on TikTok as another F1 podcast, which I think sums us up brilliantly. And it is another F1 podcast, and it's another episode of another F1 podcast. And over there is another Dan Jads. Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
How are you?
It's race week again.
It is raw seek.
It was race week last weekend. It's race weekend this weekend. It's race weekend next weekend, which is great for racing fans, terrible for podcasters. Because not a lot has happened.
No. It's not exactly been the busiest week, is it? But then they've been shipping some stuff from halfway on one side of the world to the other halfway side of the other world. So actually, they've probably been quite busy, which we can forgive them for. But yes, we are just another Formula One podcast, and quite creatively named a lap down because we started about 3 years late than everybody else did. So we thought about it and then decided we didn't want to, and then we thought it was too good of an idea to mess up. And now we're just annoying people on TikTok, which is exactly what we set out to do. So thank you so much for being annoyed at us.
Yeah.
Because without your annoyance, all of this would be pointless.
There you go. There you go. That's what we're here for. It's the Bahrain Grand Prix this weekend, Dan. What have we got to talk about leading into that?
Kind of a similar contents post, I think, to what we had at the end of the Japanese Grand Prix. Not a lot. Sergio Perez is back in the news again. Somebody's walked out of the FIA head offices with their middle fingers stuck up in the air, and poor Karen behind the reception desk has got a bit teary about it. And there's going to be no V10s, which is horrendous news. And obviously, the most important thing about it is there is another round of the lap down Formula One World Championship spreadsheet drivers competition, random wheel ofness that we have to draw drivers to. And I'm just hopeful that you get another Gasly and another Ocon.
Make it interesting. Make it interesting. Should we start with Mr. Perez then and Cadillac? Because it's sort of, for me, it's surprising and not surprising news, because a little bit like a lot of the recent Lawson discussion, the bloke can drive. The bloke did a very good driving for a long time.
Very good driving.
And then he got given an absolute dog of a car. Not a dog of a car, a very, very quick car, but an incredibly, not an easy car to drive quickly. And then everyone was like, oh, he's washed and he's terrible now. It's like, I don't think he is. And I actually think Perez for Cadillac would be a really sensible move on a commercial basis. Bloke brings quite a bit of cash with him. And just on a racing basis and an experience basis.
Yeah. Just load up whatever. Is it Mexican pesos? Would they use pesos in Mexico?
I don't know.
Let me fact check that. I'm not really sure. One moment, please, caller.
This is what people come to the podcast for, is economic chatter.
It is a Mexican peso.
There we go.
Christ, I'm good at stuff.
This guy.
Anyway, he could turn up to Cadillac with a couple of suitcases full of Mexican peso, which don't actually, just for reference, there is one Mexican peso is worth 0.038 pence.
Okay, but he's got a lot of the Mexican pesos, so
that would be helpful. He might need more than 2 briefcases. Anyway, Turn up to Cadillac, bring a load of it. He's going to do well. He's not going to throw it in the wall every 5 minutes. And if they compare him with someone like a Bottas or a Ricciardo, or probably one of those two, they're going to turn up with like a bit of a showy driver lineup from day one, aren't they? With a bit of cash. People are going to like them. And I think that's going to probably serve them quite well to have a good bit of PR behind them with two drivers that they quite like, without running the risk of a Lawson or an Antonelli or a Behrman or whatever that might go backwards into a wall at Saudi at 180 miles an hour, and then everyone goes,
how do we build
a car? It's going to be
again?
expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a hot tip right now. If Daniel Ricciardo drives a Cadillac next year, I will have a Cadillac top on episode 1 of the podcast next year. I don't think it'll happen with Danny Rick. I think he is pretty happily retired now, is the vibe I get. We've not. Has anyone heard from Daniel Ricciardo in the last 4 months? Like, the bloke is doing it properly. He's ridden off into the sun. I say ridden off. He was pushed off a cliff into the sunset, and is just embracing, retired life, I think. But no, I could see a Perez and Bottas combo at Cadillac, and I think it would be a very, very good move if they can make it happen. Because for all the reasons you say there, they're not going to stick it in a wall in a silly way. And as much as anything, I think what we saw was signs on the pit wall for Albon in Australia with making driver calls. You're going to get that from both sides of the garage. You're going to be developing a car incredibly quickly that's going to need knowledgeable feedback. And you can get that from two blokes that are going to have more race starts than a large majority of that grid and have driven a number of cars each and sort of know what cars are meant to feel like. So, sod it. Give him the redemption arc, I reckon. And Bottas needs to be freed from doing Mercedes social work, because that man is a busy boy on a TikTok. I think he's enjoying it, but I think I'd rather see him go in circles.
Yeah, I mean, he's not quite as frenetic at that as Isaac Hadjar and whoever decides to sit next to him at the Racing Toro Bulls for a couple of weeks, is he? But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's sad one. He hasn't posted on Instagram since the 11th of March, so who knows? Yeah. He looks like, hey, he's probably having a hell of a retirement. Will we ever see him in anything again? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, Perez Bottas just feels like a really smart, if they can afford them, feels like a really smart and sensible kind of place to start. Would they want an American driver because it's an American brand? I could see that as a bit of nice PR, but again, I'm not exactly sure who they'd be able
Colton
to...
Hurt is the name that always gets thrown around whenever there's chat about, we need an American driver, isn't it?
Yeah, but is he actually American?
He's the name that always gets thrown around when they decide they want an American driver.
Well, at least Wikipedia says he's an American racing driver.
You know who they've got waiting in the wings as well? Kaka! Mr. Logan Sargent. Get him in there.
Surely not. Santa Clarita, California for Colton Herta. Yeah, I don't know. But I like the idea of Perez, and I like the idea of him coming back, and I like the idea of him doing quite well.
Yeah. It would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if Perez comes back in that Cadillac and first quality of the year puts it in front of whoever's in that second Red Bull seat. Like that's the storyline that I need for round one next year. I don't think we'll get it, but that's the storyline I need for round one next year.
Good luck predicting who will be in that second Red Bull seat at the start of 2026.
Hadjar. Ricardo again, maybe. Maybe that's where he's been. Head down at the factory.
Mark Webber.
Speaking of things coming back and not coming back, V10s are not coming back. I don't think V10s were ever remotely coming back. I think this was the old classic political game of there's some bad press happening at the minute around Mr. Ben Suleiman that he wanted to go away. And how do you do that? Oh, look what I've got. It's a V10. Do you want a V10? Look at the V10. Look at that. He's just jangling keys in front of Formula One fans to distract from the fact that he's an absolute prick.
You didn't buy it, did you?
No.
You didn't buy it in the slightest. You saw him scurry out the back of the room as the nanny was.
Because I don't care, as we've discussed.
That's what I meant. That's exactly.
I was able to see that without romance and sentiment attached to it. Of this is just clearly a distraction technique, because it was just never going to happen.
No, I was V10 teased. I think is the technical terms for that. My head told me it was never going to happen, but. It's good luck telling your heart that isn't going to work, that you're going to get V10 engines back in Formula One cars, because they just sound so good. So good. And I don't want to listen to Ford Fiesta EcoBoost engines pootling around some circuit in the middle of some city that I've never heard of. Actually, apparently, Alex Albon's met with the Thai Prime Minister, and they've turned around and said that they are very serious about having a Bangkok Grand Prix.
Okay. We talked about it the other way. I'm so on board with it. Just give me...
Go for it.
Yeah,
go for it.
Holiday
no
Grand
V10s, but we might be going to Thailand for some pad thai.
Hey, why not? I can't help but feel as well. I've got red flags around all this engine chat, because for me, the new regs start in 8 months, lads. Like, we're not debating here 2030 regs, and we're not debating these new regs in 2021 anymore. The new regs are being worked on. They're basically here. They're never, unless the engines suddenly start exploding because they got something wrong in the design of them. I just can't see them making a fundamental change to the core ideology of those engines, right? Because they're now talking about, we're not doing V10s. What if we changed the percentage of combustion and electrical power or whatever? Too late, lads. Too late. Like, it just seems a little bit scrambly to me. And that raises a couple of concerns that, if it's a dinner service, we're supposed to be plating at this point, and, you're in the back there trying to start the sauce again because you burnt the last one. And the sauce isn't going to be as good. And I just worry a little bit that what's causing all of this conversation? What has happened behind closed doors that we don't know about? What have they found? What data have they seen in testing? There's obviously a concern there that they're suddenly thinking 8 months out, do we need to make a change on that? Because, yeah.
There's only one sensible, logical reason as to why they would change it. And it can only be to keep the great team of Williams down. They've been working on this 2026 car for the last 33 years, according to James Vowles.
Yeah.
And they've got it nailed.
There
and
it is.
the FIA, they don't want to see the return of the glory days. They don't want to see the big boy back at the front. They're quite happy with little Zach kind of waddling about and little Fred kind of being cheeky in team photos and stuff. They don't want to see the sport dominated by Williams again, because that is clearly what would happen if they just allowed these regs to carry on without kind of just tinkering with the engines a little bit, because they're just going to have to go and get their engines from somebody else, aren't they? But no, Williams have nailed it. And what the FIA are doing is making sure they stay in their little box.
Yeah. Carlos Sainz knew. That's why he went there.
Yeah.
They showed him behind the curtain. He knew what was going on. But yeah,
I reckon it's a nice velvet curtain as well.
Yeah.
But and I don't mean new. I mean, this is like,
Old
you know,
school.
have you ever been, I'm assuming you might have done at some point, but you've been to a theatre.
I have been to a theatre.
Everything in it just feels a bit fancy, but just has that really fine layer of like old person dust.
Oh, smells musty.
Exactly.
Mustiness
That
everywhere.
is what I imagine is going on behind those kind of garden centre doors at Williams HQ. Is it's just a little bit of a dusty, musty, old person's. It was really, really impressive when they built it in the 80s, but it's just fallen into a bit of disrepair. But people still like it. And that's what I think is going on. So I think it's a really nice kind of velvety, dusty curtain. And when the lights come on, you can just see the little dusty particles just kind of going down.
It's that. That wasn't an effect for the car launch. That was actually in the room.
That was genuinely it, yeah.
They were there. Leaning on from both of these things about looking forward and a potential scramble and things being weird, the deputy president of the FIA has told the FIA to fuck off quite aggressively and has flipped a desk, he's packed his things and he's gone with quite a punchy statement, which is interesting. If we're talking about the V10 things being, a smokescreen for other problems going on and whatnot, I mean, Mr. Robert Reid said on his way out, motorsport deserves leadership rooted in integrity, accountability, and respect for process. That's the minimum standard we should all expect and demand. He's obviously talking straight to Mohammed there. Has to be. Like, that's a very public, quite punchy statement to make when you leave what I assume is a very high-paid job at quite a top organisation.
Cushy.
Yeah.
How deep do you want to look into it, though? I think, like, I know the world of social media now operates exclusively on tinfoil hats and what kind of theories and hypotheses that could be kind of formulated from that kind of statement. But you look into it and you kind of go, well, does that mean that the sport hasn't been run as a sport for the last couple of years? Has it been run as an entertainment basis first? And is that where we've lost that integrity? What have they potentially done to make sure it's exciting whilst kind of keeping people in tow that maybe shouldn't have been in tow? I mean, what happened to that Red Bull car last year after the first 6 races to suddenly make it kind of honkingly bad, and the McLaren car could come from nowhere and we had a mathematical chance at a 2-way fight for the last Grand Prix of the year? How much of that's been going on, I suppose, is something that maybe that alludes to. I can't think how else he would be that upset if he was going to bring in the words kind of integrity and those fairly kind of hard hitting words, aren't they? But
yeah,
I don't know. It's a tough one. It is a tough one because, I mean, tinfoil hat, Abu Dhabi, that was pretty scripted.
I mean, I don't think it's anything to do with Abu Dhabi.
Do you not?
I think it's just solely an attack on MBS. Like, and it's a very targeted attack on a bloke that is running the FIA to his own liking, I think, because I think the whole show v sport element is almost a level below the FIA as well, because that is a Liberty thing. That's an FOM thing. That's when it's come away from the governance of the motorsport into how we're presenting our package. I mean, there's like Motorsport UK and the FIA have been bickering quite publicly for the last couple of months as well. And I can't help but feel that if you had like a Susie Wolf, for example, as the head of the FIA, are we seeing the same discussions and stuff going on? There would be entirely different discussions at that point. But I can't help but feel it's just a direct. I mean, I don't know. I'm only working off a five line quote from this guy, but
bit of power struggle.
Yeah, I think it's maybe you know when you play Mario Party, right? And you do the mini game where it's one person that gets called out, and then there's 3 people on the other team, and it's a 1v3 battle. But more often than not, the one wins the 1v3 because they've sort of given an extra power in that game. It kind of feels a little bit like that at the FIA, that, you know, MBS is the one behind the giant water cannon and the rest of the FIA are trying to run up the hill towards him, and it's just skewed for the one to always win. But, I mean, you never really want to see any level of instability in the governing body of a sport, full stop. That's never led to a good thing, ever.
No. I mean, there's a fair few crooked people end up in there, though, isn't there? So it's hardly like... I don't think anybody was ever surprised when they read the statement and the quote that came out from the chap that's just left. So, yeah. I mean, and at the end of the day, I'm sure if he was bent for a £4 note, he'd get another job in cricket or football or something like that, and he'd probably do all right for himself. So I dare say he'll be fine.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
He'll work himself out.
Yeah. Hey. We have a very kind of integral part of the Formula One World Championship, don't we? We've got Bahrain.
Yes.
There will be some overtakes, unlike Japan, because
overtakes.
they have... Well, how long is that straight? About a kilometre and a half, I think, down the start-finish line.
A backwards hairpin that sends you 180 degrees. I quite like Bahrain as a track.
It's all right. It's all right.
I think this weekend at the Bahrain Grand Prix is actually going to be our first proper running order, I think, for 2025. Because if we look at what's happened in Australia, it's not a really balanced track in terms of what you want from the car. And we had changeable weather conditions, and we also had 18 rookies crashing into each other. The Japanese Grand Prix, absolutely pointless procession. It didn't matter what your car was up to. And then China was just sort of an absolute, all over the shop with the sprint weekend and everything in there as well. Bahrain, there's a reason they do a lot of the testing at the Bahrain. Oil money. But also because it's a decent track that has quick bits, slow bits, fast corners, slow corners, fiddly bits, technical bits, flowy bits. And it's a nice all-in-one track. And also oil money. We could, after this weekend, actually finally now, it's going to be dry, I would wager, be able to get a really nice 1 to 20 order. I'm going to throw it out there as well. Yuki's now had a race in the car and has spent some more time in the car as well, so we might actually see a little bit more about that second Red Bull car, possibly.
I'm thinking points.
I'm thinking points. Lots of Red Bull points.
Yuki.
Yeah, I think Monday's pod, we might have plenty to talk about in terms of actually knowing where the cars stand.
Let's hope so. Because, I mean, in the build-up to this, allegedly Ferrari have got some upgrades to bring along, which will go on both cars, because I've heard there was some displeasure between Lewis and Charles as to who had what and who didn't have something else, and so hopefully they'll both get the same upgrade, which they think will take them a little bit closer to those two cars at the front, which again would make Formula One more interesting and more exciting if there was genuinely 6 cars. But obviously, if I mean, to be fair, they've got to get past George Russell first.
Because 6 cars plus George Russell who races.
I think he'll be there. I'm fairly sure he'll be turning up, but they've got to get past him first. If he's assuming he shows up on the broadcast. But yeah, it'll be good, won't it? And Lewis has got long curly hair now.
Wow. When's the last time we saw Lewis Hamilton with the flowing Jason Gillespie curl mullet? Because I feel like that's been years. I might have missed something here, and someone might correct me very quickly in the comments and say, oh no, he had the curls out in Australia. I was startled by the picture of Lewis Hamilton with the flowing curly mullet. What's happened to this bloke? between Japan and Bahrain that this is what's going on, and more importantly, what are the implications on the car speed in the championship? Because there's going to be some.
Could be a bit more drag.
Yeah, or dirty air, so you won't be able to get close to him because the curl's given it this one. That's outwash.
Do you reckon he's done it deliberately, or do you reckon he just hasn't had time to go to his barbers to get himself tidied up again for the next Grand Prix?
How long does... I feel like getting dreadlocks takes a while, doesn't it?
I would have thought so, and I mean, he's a fairly busy bloke.
Yeah. I don't know, but it was...
things going on. But.
It was quite a lot to see in the first paddock photos of the weekend, Lewis Hamilton rocking up with that, but maybe there's powers in it. Maybe what he's been missing since 2021 Abu Dhabi is the mullet power.
He's like Samson.
All that stopped him from being an 8-time world champion is the mullet.
That was it.
And the lack of it.
Definitely no lack of integrity going on. Nothing at all there.
Nothing to do with the car.
But no, I agree with you. I'm quietly optimistic, and I realise that there might be a little bit of flatness coming out the back of that Japanese Grand Prix because it was honking. And I don't think that we've had a particularly good weekend between Australia and China and Japan between them. So, yeah, I'm optimistic for the Bahrain Grand Prix, but so far, this 2025 banger of a season that we were kind of anticipating, promised, expecting, hasn't really lived up to expectation, has it? But the one championship that has lived up to every bit of expectation that you and I both thought it might have when we put this spreadsheet together is the Dan versus AB Formula One World Championship random driver wheel of misfortune on a spreadsheet trophy race for that each week. So far, after 3 rounds, you have a lead of 12 points, 47 to 35. And that might be a lot. It might not be much at all.
Quickly. We don't know. One race winner, that changes quickly.
We haven't had a race winner yet, have we?
No. What I will say, though, we're talking about, people are saying, we were expecting a banger of a season. It's not been great so far. We've had 3 races and 3 different race winners, which, I understand they didn't necessarily get there through wonderful side-by-side, wheel-to-wheel action and all the rest of it. But at least it's not just been, we know who's going to win. That's one thing to take away. Okay, corner 1 in Japan, we knew who was going to win by that point. But at least it's different faces getting their little Louis Vuitton box. That's something.
It's certainly something. It's certainly something. But look,
you ready for a driver?
Give yourself a little spin. You've got first. You've got the first driver this week.
Come on, then. Come on, orange boys. There's no orange coming. George, silent boy, invisible boy, not Lance. Okay, I'll take it.
That's a good start, you know.
Yep, that's a banker. That's a P4 right there. So how many points do I get for P4? Because you can put that in the spreadsheet now.
I was going to say, you've genuinely got points. You'll know nothing about them.
No. I will find out what points I get on the podcast. But we've got George Russell in. I'm happy with that as a first choice.
That is a very good
safe pick. It's like a banker lap in quali, right? Put a good time on the board. You might not need to go out again. Might be able to save a set of tyres.
Yeah.
I'm saving a set of random championship tyres.
Wouldn't argue. Come on.
Going up against him. Who have we got? Come on.
I don't feel that optimistic about... Oh, no.
It's green. Hey, it's not the worst of the greens.
My driver has more world championships than your driver.
There we go. That's something. Fernando Alonso, he could pull a surprise out the bag. And when was his last good result? Bahrain. Yeah. He's had a good couple of Bahrains in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
There are worse picks on the wheel, is what I'll say. So,
hey, look, if he could sneak in and pick me a point.
Yeah.
If my next driver turns out to be Lando Piastri, then we're kind of in business. But it's not looking like a great weekend, is it, so far?
Speaking of not great weekends, by the way, this totally passed us by. I'm going back to the Japanese Grand Prix here. Was
there another thing that happened?
2 episodes ago, I said on this podcast, Lance Stroll's had a decent start to the year, and this guy looks like a new bloke. And the Japanese Grand Prix, he was last by about 2.5 days. Yeah. So I don't know what happened to Lance in Japan, but he did well to escape my wrath on the podcast last week. I'll say that much.
I don't know whether I'm getting competitive enough here for hope that you get a stinker. Oh, it's your boy.
Okay.
Well, there we go. See, there is the reaction of a man that you don't know whether Yuki's done enough to impress in a Red Bull yet.
I don't know if it means points. That's a totally separate issue. He didn't finish last, and that was the main thing in the Red Bull last week. That's me back-to-back on Yuki, isn't it? The last 2 weeks.
No, I had Yuki last week.
Oh, you had Yuki last week.
Yeah, you
Yuki
had
driving
Pierre
back-to-back.
and Esteban.
You know what? With a banker, I think Yuki's a great pick with a banker in my back pocket.
You could quite comfortably be talking about a 4 and 5 at the end of the weekend.
I could be taking George's points and no other points. But I actually think of all the weeks, assuming that I have to get every driver once. I understand that the probabilities don't work like that, but assuming everybody's going to drive me at different points, I feel like having Yuki alongside George Russell, that's not bad.
Yeah, we've not had repeat drivers yet. We've had drivers race for both teams, but we've not had repeat drivers yet. Looking back through my list, bearing in mind George Russell's already gone and Tsunoda's already gone. If I was to get a repeat driver, I would be looking at Kimi Antonelli, Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, or Oscar Piastri. Yeah. Which, the week that I had him, obviously he stunk the bed in in Australia. So come on, put me out of my misery. Who's my second driver? Who's my number 2 driver?
Here we go.
Dick Energy Racing.
Well, there he goes. Here comes Nico again. Here comes Nico again. He's just talked about the double ups. And there it is. Welcome back to the team. It's an all-green team for the Bahrain Grand Prix.
That's so bad.
It's Nico Hülkenberg.
What I'm going to do is, you can't see this on the podcast, but I'm just going to put 0 in now.
He's done it twice as well. He's got a double 0 there.
Lovely job.
Well, there we go. So you've got Nico Hülkenberg and Fernando Alonso. I have got Yuki Tsunoda and mystery man George Russell. I'm feeling better about this weekend than last weekend, I'll tell you that much.
That sticks.
Yeah, there it is. Well, hey, we'll see how we go on Monday. That's all we've got to talk about for today. We are set for another race weekend in Bahrain. In the meantime, Lapdown Pod on various socials. You know them by now. Leave us a review. Send this to someone else. lapdownpod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. If you'd like to go and watch Dan do cricket stuff.
Yeah, you can have a look at danjazz.com, actually. You can. That is a website, to be fair. You can go there.
Plug in a URL
I just, for a second there, I assumed that there was a website, and that's because there is.
I like the idea. Like when restaurants sometimes just put a domain name they wish they owned on like their Google listing, and you click it and it obviously doesn't exist because they just thought that's how the internet works.
PizzaHut.com.
That's kind of what you've done there. And if you want to watch
it does actually work
on the internet, twitch.tv/HeyLookAtAlex, you can do that on there. We will see everybody on Monday, all being well, to discuss some hot Bahrainian action.
Let's have some more to talk about. Please.
Let's do that. See you later.
Please.